Hi, my name is Gilles Pegel. Currently having a show in Dudelange at Centre d'Art Nei Liicht. The show is called Disorganized Infodump. The works that I'm showing in Dudelange is it's a selection of works that from around 2016 to till this year. So some older productions, some new stuff I made for the show, and they all kind of talk about time, our relation to time, how we perceive time, how time is defined because of where we are, like our planet. Our time is defined by the orbit of our planet around the sun. So I also produced a video that's called A Day Lasts 60 Minutes. And this video installation raises the question, what would be if our day-night shift would only last 60 minutes instead of 24 hours? Let me introduce the series called Time Sinks. It's a series of canvases that are, in fact, it's almost like photograms. So it's colored fabric that got bleached by the sun, so by light, and it took a very long time to for the color to fade. And the results you see, some see like real quick gestures, like with the spray can, but it's not that. So it's always also the relation you have with stuff that you see and you think you know what it is, but it's not really the stuff you think it is. So it's like condensed time that got fixed on the canvas. And it's also like I gave away the control of how the final paintings will look like, because it's like I didn't paint them myself. I just took the decision to choose the fabric and put it, expose it to the sun, and let just light and time do its job. Yeah, my work in this series consisted into choosing the fabric, exposing it to light during a certain amount of time, and then afterwards the composition, like choosing the cropping of the image. And there's I got another series that's called cumulus homogenitus, and that's the scientific expression for clouds that are made by humans. So, for example, due to heavy industry, power plants that produce steam. So it's not natural clouds, but it's clouds that are manufactured by humans. And the work itself, it's second-hand hard drive platter. So I bought used hard drives around the world, so on eBay and other markets that I disassembled. I took out the platters which still contain like could be sensitive and very intimate data of people, personal information that could be still be read if you have the proper forensic tools to read the data on those platters. And so you have this collective memory that you can acquire around the world that is really not private anymore. And I assembled those platters, in the shapes of water molecules. And those again I assembled to form big clouds. So you have this relation to that we upload personal stuff on servers around the world and give out our personal, most intimate information about ourselves, our habits, and we just share it. The cloud series, they're reflective discs, so you see yourself, your image reflecting in those metal platters, and it represents also the content of those discs. So your private information and the memory of each person that saved stuff on those media. You also find this analogy with proper clouds, like rain going down or water vapor going up, and then the clouds moving on and raining down somewhere else, and stuff growing from it. So it's also you can draw parallels to also the information that circulates through our connected world nowadays, and knowledge, and also disinformation that gets picked up somewhere and reinterpreted. So it's all about personal data, how it's becoming that like personal data is not so personal anymore. So it's all about that in the end. In the show, you'll also find 2 sculptures that are part of a series called Hardfork. And maybe I can explain. The term Hardfork is used in software development, where you have like a code base that is like the origin or the starting point. You always use the same code base to try to create something new or better, to improve the result, but always using the same base of code. And here it's my starting point is like this shape. So in this series of sculptures, I always use the same model. It's a helix that contains a perversion. So it got this perversion in the helix. It's also called perverted chirality, and it's a geometric form that doesn't appear naturally in nature. So you really don't find it often. It can happen due to mutations of plants, for example. And it's a phenomenon that got documented first in 1865, I think, by Charles Darwin in some scientific paper that covered climbing plants. And then I did some research on this geometric form, and I found some other scientific paper from some university where scientists were like developing a process to create those perversions in the helixes. So I started also like working on small silicon models where I tried to recreate those helixes with those perversions in it. And so it's this work on those helix shapes is an ongoing work, but I found like this perfect kind of, I came up with this perfect kind of shape. So that's like the base for the Hardfork series. So I have always this same model that I use, producing this sculpture in all different kind of mediums. So I have an aluminium cast. I have one that's made out of chrome, showing in this current exhibition, and I intend to produce them in all kinds of different mediums, because I'm like on the quest to the perfect, to something. Yeah, I try to improve the resulting work by changing the medium. The show definitely talks about time, but also about scales. How important are we? How important is our planet in this whole universe that is still unknown to us? So I started a series a few years ago. It's small drawings. So you have these drawings that look like planets, but also look like small stuff you would see when you look through microscopes. The titles also of the works, it's scales, random scales with no indication of size. Yeah, so it raises the question: how important are we? Like this small Earth, this whole weird universe where we live in. So. And the drawings, I installed the drawings in in the room just before the room where I'm showing a video projection, and the projection I'm showing, it's a video I produced showing a sphere that's for me also represents a planet. Well, when you see it, it's a planet, but in fact it's not. But that will be too technical to explain. So the series of drawings called Celestial Bodies, it's graphite on vintage paper. So the element the element of carbon is also something that's it's like redundant in my work. You see it in a lot of pieces in the show. It's for me it's like it's the element of life, carbon. When we die, we turn into carbon, and then there's new stuff growing out of our remains. When you enter the show on your right, they're like two small framed coals. The coals are not coals made from regular wood, but it's two pieces of toilet paper that I shot, and the work is called the beginning and the end. The remains of those two pieces of toilet papers, it's pure carbon because it's coal, and it represents the cycles of humans and the cycle of life. So in a lot of my works, you have the element carbon playing an essential role, or working as sign. It's like, for example, if you see this small work, the beginning and the end, where you have those two coals, they are pure carbon in the form of a coal. But then in other works, like the Celestial Body series, you have it in form of graphite drawings. So you have carbon in graphite form. Carbon can also be diamond. When we talk about diamonds, we can talk about resources. Then maybe we can talk about the small installation I also made for the show. It's called This Is Fine. Essentially, it's pieces of tarmac I took on construction sites through Luxembourg. So I stopped the workers and picked up some pieces of tarmac and brought them to my studio. And the surface and the shape, it reminded me like when you see close-ups or height maps from planets that you can find on the internet from NASA's site, or when images from the surface of the moon and other planets. And so I had them lying around in my studio. I think maybe for 2-3 years they just lay around, and then I turned them into some kind of samples of planet samples, meteorite samples, asteroid samples, and I covered them with a layer of graphite and with some small precious metal flakes like gold, silver, and copper. And the work, yeah, it talks about resources, like it's all about resources or economy. It's like a quest to the who is in control of the world's resources, and countries going into depths. Modern kind of colonization of countries and continents, and all the misery and wars and stuff that's going on. It's all due to resources, be it petrol or rare metals or diamonds or whatever. And now we have like Luxembourg that's gonna be specializing into space mining or tapping into space mining. So it's all about this. And then you have those shapes of tarmac. There's one bigger one. It's really heavy. It looks a bit like the shape of Luxembourg, maybe during another moment in history. For me, it's really bookmarks of my thoughts. So it's where my knowledge or the knowledge that I can acquire with the where the limits of science is, or where my limits of understanding is, where they stop. The results of all these thoughts, I put them in form of artworks, and for me, it's really a little bit like an organized info dump of information I have in my mind, and where my limits of understanding are. So I distill all this into some kind of objects, sculptures, or videos, or drawings, or installations. And in general, I don't restrict myself on some media. I always feel like the urge to paint, and that's something I really missed. But then I find myself losing time on other stuff, or where I don't find the ideal answer in the form of painting for my thoughts that I want to put in form. So I really chose different mediums. I produced also a neon for the show. Well, in fact, it's a piece I already showed once in 2018, I think, or 17. And the neon, the work is called Evidence. Initially, it was just a reflection, like how evidence can be forged, or how reliable evidence is, how easily it can be transformed or switched on or off just by pulling the plug out of the socket. And the light goes out, the evidence is gone. The next day you come, you put back the plug into the wall socket, and the evidence is there again. That was the initial start of this work. Then I showed it in 2017, I think. And during the unhanging of the show, I was a bit in a rush, and I broke the neon. And that led me onto the idea to just reproduce it, because how reliable can evidence be? You just can like reproduce evidence, forge it. Especially today, if you see with all the new advancements in software, where you can where you have like those deep fake videos and also audio, where you really can't. It's difficult for a layman to separate truth from forgery and lies, and that work. It's all about that. So in this show here, I'm showing the broken neon next to the new one I produced, and the broken neon is now part of the work, and it solves also a nice problem of artwork conservation. So even if afterwards it breaks again, you can just reproduce it, with the plans that will come with the work. So for this show, I also produced my first video work or video installation. The video it's called "A Day Lasts 60 Minutes," and what you see is a planet that takes 60 minutes to spin one round. So the day-night cycle only lasts 60 minutes and not 24 hours like on the Earth. And it's also work about time. So how would life be if our night and day cycle wouldn't be 24 hours, but maybe a year or shorter, like in the video 60 minutes. And it's definitely also like reference to the increasing speed of our world, or how we function and how information is consumed, and the advance of technology that speeds things up, but you always have the feeling that you're not catching up with everything, like information that gets out, and with the urge to always be up to date on everything, but it's impossible. Made to be the quest to knowledge and understanding, or just getting up to date on the latest trends or what's going on around, or you see it on the small scale in your friend circle, staying up to date on everything, or on a bigger scale, like staying up to date on the advancement of technology and science and geopolitical problems. And the image of the movie, it's produced 100% analog, so we could have just rendered this planet in some 3D software quickly, but no, we filmed a sphere that in fact is an old steel ball, and so again, it's something you recognize and you think, okay, you have an idea of what it is, but it's not really that. And the audio part also plays a big role in the installation, and I recorded it at a friend's studio. So we recorded a clock. So here the seconds, the time ticking, time passing,